Hey guys, this is Ray, owner of Double R Diesel. Welcome back to the shop. And guys, thank you for tuning in again. If you were looking for a Q&A video from this past weekend, being it was Easter weekend, I did take the weekend off to spend a little extra time with the family. So I didn't do a Q&A this past Saturday for Sunday morning, but I plan to do another one this coming weekend. So if you're a weekly watcher, stay tuned. I'll get back on that this coming weekend and we'll do another question and answer session. Today I wanted to bring you a video specifically because there's a lot going on in Washington right now that is very relevant to the diesel performance industry. And in particular, there has been a letter that has been sent by a committee in the House of Representatives addressed directly to Lee Zeldin, the head of the EPA, as well as Pam Bondi, the head of the Justice Department. And this letter was signed by Clay Higgins, the chairman of the subcommittee for federal law enforcement. So what is this letter all about? Well, I'll put it up on the screen here so that you can read it yourself. Other YouTube channels have been talking about this letter in the past 2-3 days, and rightfully so. And I think it's good that other channels have picked up on this and they are talking about it because this is really big. So this committee, which is part of the House of Representatives, part of the Oversight Committee in Government Reform, looks, into matters pertaining to federal law enforcement, federal regulation. This letter, which was dated the 11th of April, and it was addressed to Attorney General Pam Bondi and the Administrator Lee Zeldin of the EPA. And it basically says that the Subcommittee of Federal Law Enforcement is investigating the weaponization of overly burdensome regulatory enforcement against American people, specifically environmental enforcement actions by the Department of Justice and the Environmental Protection Agency. And it goes on in this letter to talk about how the subcommittee feels that both the EPA and the Department of Justice during the Biden administration was targeting businesses and individuals in a weaponization kind of movement to basically bring hard times for people that, were against what the Biden administration was pushing at that time. Specifically, this letter talks about, people who were outspoken against the Biden administration and how they felt like that these people were targeted by the Department of Justice and the EPA under the Biden administration. And one in particular that is relevant to us, in the footnotes, it specifically mentions the Department of Justice case between the United States and Power Performance Enterprises Incorporated, who is owned by Corey Willis. And if you guys know anything about the diesel performance industry, that Corey Willis is one of the big names that's out there who has probably taken more heat than anybody in the diesel performance industry and has tried to fight the government more than anybody. He's the one that they basically tried to make an example out of, in my opinion. Corey's a big guy. He does a lot of tuning. I'm just a small fry compared to him. He tunes Power Strokes, Duramaxes, and Cummins as well. He does a lot of other stuff outside of diesel tuning as well. So he's a very big tuner. He does a lot of stuff, and he's got a very successful and large business. But he was also he was hit very hard by both the Environmental Protection Agency and the Department of Justice under the Biden administration. He had civil and criminal charges brought against him. He's had to pay big fines. He's had, he's deemed a felon. He can no longer vote or possess firearms legally. He has had a lot of strikes against him. And, and in my opinion, it's been quite unfair. I'll just say that. It's been very unfair, in my opinion, how the government has handled him. When we're at the end of the day, we're all in this together. Corey is, he's one of, you might say back in the day, he might have been competition to me. I wouldn't be any competition to him because I was so small. But, at the end of the day, we're all brothers in this together. And I hated to see it happen to him. Obviously, I didn't get hit like he did, but still, I got hit. So this letter is important because if you read the entire letter and you go into the second page, it says that the subcommittee's investigation and oversight in this matter, Clay Higgins requests a staff level briefing from the DOJ and the EPA by this coming Friday, April 25th. And it says briefers should at a minimum be prepared to address the following in these meetings. And it gives two statements here. What is being done to ensure consent decrees related to environmental regulations are reviewed, and what is being done to prevent any more weaponization of regulatory enforcement against American people. So, what is a consent decree? Well, if anybody knows anything about the situation, guys like myself know it quite well. So the consent decree is basically the paperwork that the EPA or the Department of Justice draws up that you, as someone under investigation or has been charged, has to sign, basically stipulating what you have to do moving forward with your business or businesses in order to meet the requirements to keep the government off your back. And what is so crazy about this situation and all these consent decrees is that they are all over the place as far as how they were administered and what was put in the wordage. So, for example, in Corey Willis's case, his paperwork basically said that not only couldn't he could no longer sell defeat devices or delete tuning products. Anything that he sold moving forward had to meet CARB emissions regulation standards. And if you know anything about CARB, California Air Resource Board, they have some of the most strict environmental standards when it comes to emissions from motor vehicles. And in order to meet those standards, you have to have quote unquote CARB testing done and have all that approved. And that takes a lot of time and a tremendous amount of money to get all your calibrations or products certified by CARB. Now, what was so wrong about all this in his case is that he didn't sell into California, but yet he had to meet that standard for everything that he sold. Now, me personally, the CAFO or the consent decree that I signed after my investigation was done did not specifically say anything about what I did moving forward. Had to meet CARB certification. So things were levied all over the place when these things were done, and when you were under investigation and whatever your punishment was, it just varied all over the place as far as what you had to do, what you had to pay, and so on and so forth. And it really basically raises a red flag how some people, some individuals were targeted more than others, and it was all a political smear. I'm not going to talk anymore about somebody else, but I want to say how this relates to the diesel industry and how it relates to me, owner of Double R Diesel. So I want to see something done about this. I was targeted during the Biden administration's reign. So, I was contacted back in 2023. I had started my investigation then, and I settled everything at the end of 2024 prior to the election. Kind of quaint on the timing, wouldn't you think? But that's how it was done. Mine was done very quickly, as where some others were done much more slowly. So that kind of raises a red flag in my opinion. They really rushed to get mine out the door. But, I didn't pay as big a fine and had as bad as punishment as some had. Now, let me back up just a second. You know, my fine that I had to pay in relation to what other shops have had to pay or other businesses had to pay was much smaller. But anytime you're hit by one of these consent decrees or a CAFO that you have to sign, anytime that you're punished by the government, it's more than just the fine, okay? So for me, the fine hurt, but what hurt more than anything is not being able to sell certain products. I'll just say this. We just got through doing our taxes for our businesses this last month. So we were able to go back and look at 2023's taxes versus 2024's taxes, and we looked at what double R diesel revenue was in 2023 versus 2024, pre-investigation, post-investigation, and the income, my income for double R diesel was cut by almost 98% as a result of being investigated by the Environmental Protection Agency and having to sign my consent agreement final order. So basically, you know, what I'd all said is I could no longer sell any kind of emissions delete product or defeat device products whatsoever. So that cut out 98% of my business. Now for you guys out there, and I've already seen some other comments in other videos, you need to actually go back and look at, I've got a video and I'll put a link in the description below where I talk about my case specifically and how the Environmental Protection Agency conducted their case against me and how it all turned out. But going back to that, I've had some people say, you know, if 98% of your business was selling delete products, then you weren't doing something right. Let me address that. So for most people who have, in my case, a 6.7 liter Cummins truck and they want to tune it for whatever reason, 98% of those people want to tune it because they want to delete it, okay? You know, there's other things, there's parts and stuff that we sell, but the big majority of the business was for guys that wanted to get rid of that burdensome stuff that was on their truck that was costing them time and lots of money, okay? That was 98% of my business, and that's still 98% of the business that's out there. Why do I say that? Well, because I have people come to me all the time still looking, tuning parts and services for their 6.7 liter Cummins truck. And I can't help them. Does that stop them? No, they just move on and get it from somebody out of Canada. And that brings me to another point. The whole point, supposedly, of the Environmental Protection Agency, and in some other people's cases, the Department of Justice, was to stop Americans from deleting the emissions off their diesel trucks. Have they done that? No. Why do I say that? Because if they can't get it from me, if they can't get it from Corey Willis, if they can't get it from other legitimate American diesel tuners / companies, then they're getting it out of Canada. They're getting it out of China, okay? It's still coming in. What the government has done so far has done basically zero zilch as far as stopping guys from deleting their trucks. Now, I'm not saying I'm against guys deleting their trucks. Oh, no, I'm not. I understand why, and there's a legitimate need to do it in some cases. But it hasn't stopped a thing as far as what our government has done through the Environmental Protection Agency and the Department of Justice as far as actions they've taken against American companies and people like me. They haven't done anything to stop people from deleting the trucks. All they have effectively done is put small businesses like mine and larger businesses like Corey Willis out of business, okay? And sent that money to Canada and China. Not only that, they're not getting tax money that they could be getting from guys like me if we were profiting here now. You know, I said I'm making 98% less. Well, guess what? The government's getting a lot less money in tax revenue off me. So it's really kind of stupid. The money's not, they're basically taking money from themselves. Yeah, they're finding people and getting money, but in the grand scheme of things, they're costing us American people money, and they're actually costing the government money, and they're doing absolutely nothing for the environment. It's a bunch of junk, okay? So you get my frustration. Another thing that I'm frustrated about while I'm talking about it is the fact that, yes, all this money is going to Canada and China. These shops in Canada are rolling in it now because everybody still can and will delete their truck, and if they can't get it here, they're sending their money to Canada. So all these shops in Canada, God bless them, they are making money hand over fist because guys, legitimate guys like us here in America can't do it no more. Legally, anyway. I'm not saying what might be going on behind closed doors, not me, but, you know, I can't speak for other people. I've been trying to play by the rules. And when I say I'm trying to play by the rules, I'll give you an example. I don't do a lot of business still, but say, for example, last week, I think I might have had 5 or 6 orders that come in that I had to turn around and refund. And that was the vast majority of Double R Diesel's income from last week. I had to turn around and refund it. Why? Because these guys bought tuning for deleted trucks. And it's crazy because on my website, it specifically says we do not offer delete tuning or parts. And when you check out on my website, there is a notice that you have to check and acknowledge before you can even complete the checkout. And that acknowledgement that you have to acknowledge says that what you are purchasing is for emissions compliance, and it does not work on a deleted truck, and it will not allow you to delete your emissions equipment. But yet people will still check that and buy it. And then when I get the order and contact the customer about tuning their truck, they say, oh, I want to delete my truck. Oh, it's already deleted. I just thought that was up there for, you know, a front, but it's not. Guys, I'm really trying to play by the rules. It would be so easy to cheat because if I hadn't played by the rules and I cheated, I could have made a lot more money last week. Okay? So understand this. If you play by the rules, it's really frustrating. It's very frustrating because when I tell these people I can't help them and I refund their money, well, they're going to send it to Canada or China and get what they want. And unfortunately, what they end up getting from Canada or China is not so great. Matter of fact, I just had somebody email me this evening that has a RevMax transmission in their truck and they need RevMax approved tuning. But since tuners here in America can't tune it for deletion, this person went to Canada to get his engine/transmission tuning. Well, guess what? RevMax reviewed a data log from this guy's truck, and it said if you don't change your transmission tuning, it's going to kill your transmission. I'm not calling any names as far as who the tuner was because this person didn't even tell me who the tuner was, so I couldn't call it anyway. But the point of the matter is, guys are sending their money to Canada and China to get delete tuning, and a lot of times it is not quality tuning. They're just getting something that people in Canada and China are making to take advantage of the situation. It's really not hard to make a tune to delete a truck. That's actually pretty easy if you know the basic things that you got to turn off. But to make a good tune, along with good transmission tuning, that's when you got to have some brains behind it. And you got to have some experience. And a lot of these new shops that are popping up, taking advantage of the situation here in America, it's not quality tuning because they're just simply trying to get something quick out the door and make a quick buck, okay? So, guys, I just wanted to bring this letter that should be addressed this week by the Department of Justice and the Environmental Protection Agency. Is being brought to light by this subcommittee of federal law enforcement chaired by Clay Higgins. Guys, if now was ever a time to reach out to your elected officials and to encourage them to continue on this press, to bring some common sense legislation as far as reining back what the EPA can do, what the Department of Justice can do, what the Clean Air Act can state, now's the time to get on the horn with your elected officials. Call their offices in D.C., email them through their websites. Do something, because if you don't make any noise, nothing's going to come out of this. So now's the time. Call your representatives, call your senators, make your voices heard, make noise. As the saying goes, the squeaky wheel will get the grease. So as always, guys, thank you for following along. God bless each and every one of you, and I promise you, I'll see you again real soon.